Aloha, everyone, and welcome back to Awakening to the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle. Today I have the beautiful Miss Kate Orson here. Kate, did I say your last name right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Kate, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for being here to connect with me and share your beautiful presence with the audience.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to be part of this.
You know what I find interesting is that several times throughout this interview series, I have intuitively picked similar or the same colors or themes as the person that I'm interviewing.
Yeah.
How about
you know, this isn't what I've been wearing all day. I changed into it specifically for the interview.
love those synchronicities. Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit about you, Kate, to get anybody who isn't familiar with you familiar. Miss Kate is a writer, parent educator, activist, and trainee sexological body worker. She is the author of Tears Heal, How to Listen to Our Children, and is currently crowdfunding to publish a memoir about her experience with the LEAP procedure called A Cut in the Brain. Kate is originally from the UK, but now lives in Italy where she works, writing, teaching, therapeutic writing, and helping other women recover from LEAP. Okay, so I would love for you to start off by explaining what that procedure is.
Okay, yeah, so the LEAP procedure is something that happens after, I'm sure many of your viewers are familiar with having a pap smear, and sometimes it comes back as abnormal, and what that means is that it might become cancerous in the future. And so they have a preventative procedure called the LEAP procedure, which removes like a piece of the cervix. And that's what the LEAP procedure is. And the idea is that if they're removing this area of abnormality, then this can help prevent cancer.
Okay. So
From developing.
So that's a pretty common procedure then. It's so funny. On the last interview when I was talking to Danelle, she does a lot of cervix work. And I was telling her about the last pap coming back abnormal and how I probably, they probably would have wanted me to get this procedure done. So your book, A Cut in the Brain, is about your experience with this procedure and how it affected your life, right?
Yeah. So it's about side effects that I had that I wasn't told about by the doctors when I went to have the procedure. And then it's kind of this, I think it's like a 10-year journey, 12 years maybe, figuring out what happened to me, why it happened, and how to recover afterwards. So yeah.
And what did you experience afterwards? What were some of the side effects that you had?
Yeah, so after the procedure, I was quite shocked to discover that like sex was completely different for me. Like it became painful, and like I completely lost my libido. And during sex, like if I had an orgasm, it's like I could feel like this muscle moving, like I was having an orgasm, but I couldn't feel pleasure. And I was quite shocked that that happened because I hadn't been told by my doctor that there are any side effects like that related to sex. I did, you know, I had this vague idea, the cervix is to do with childbirth. I had no idea that had anything to do with sex. So I just thought they were two completely separate things, when of course, like they're not. So I was really shocked to have those side effects. Like I just couldn't find any information about any other women experiencing this. This was, it was about 15 years ago now. So the internet wasn't quite as, we had the internet and there was lots of information on it, but yeah, I just couldn't find any good information about what happened to me, if any other women had been through it. And it took me 12 years to realized that I wasn't the only one. I assumed that I had these weird side effects that nobody else had, because otherwise I thought my doctor would have told me about it. But then 12 years later, I realized that it's probably happening to millions of women out there. Not everyone, like there are lots of women that are totally fine after the procedure, but there is a large proportion that aren't. Yeah.
So so it basically cut off your ability to experience pleasure during sex. Is that what I'm...
Yeah. So basically what it is there are these nerves in the cervix. One of them is the vagus nerve, which starts in the cervix and goes like directly up through our body, through the heart, I think, and the stomach and the heart, and then into the brain. So it literally damages the vagus nerve. So it's like this huge trauma. Like if anyone knows anything about the vagus nerve, they know like it's really an essential nerve for our emotional well-being. And yeah, so it can damage that. And if for some women, if it doesn't quite if it doesn't particularly cut that nerve, then they're okay. But for the unlucky ones, yeah, it can cause like a huge trauma and numbness during sex and other side effects like that.
Damn, excuse my language, but wow. I was just getting a visual of the body and how important that nerve is, and how just, this is one of the things that I'm sure infuriates a lot of women when it comes to the way that modern medicine is practiced, because from what I'm understanding, this sounds like it should be considered an experimental procedure, for there not being enough research out to know exactly what happens to it. And that's just kind of to think that it's just standard and they're doing it to, hundreds of thousands of women, and having no real understanding of how it's affecting them is kind of appalling.
I think experimental is a good way to describe it, because what I realized when I looked into the research and the lack of research is that they didn't really do a lot of research, and they didn't have a good understanding of female sexuality when they introduced this procedure in the 80s. And they had this assumption based on this research by Alfred Kinsey, and he did this kind of weird experiment with the cervix, where he like touched it with a cotton bud and then assumed it was numb because women couldn't feel it. But what he kind of like misinterpreted his own research, because when there was firm pressure on the cervix, women could feel it. So that's not even a very detailed study about it. But now, like, there is research that's showing that the vagus nerve connects to the cervix, and there is a doctor in the US looking at the harm that the leak causes and what nerves are being harmed. But yeah, the procedure was introduced before the research. So it's kind of like based on this assumption about the female body that's completely wrong, and not that many doctors are open to listening to women talk about their side effects and say, well, actually, this procedure has destroyed my sex life. They think, oh, there's no research, but there's actually no research to show it's safe either. So yeah.
Wow. So this has been like a decade-long journey for you. Can I ask you how it's been going? Have you been able to heal from it?
Yeah. So shortly after I had the procedure, I'd been kind of interested in Tantra and things like that before. Mm-hmm. I had like this experience before I had the procedure. I think when I was about 22, I had this weird, it's not weird, it's kind of amazing, but I had this like sexual experience where I had this orgasm, and it felt like it didn't come from inside my body. It felt like it through the air, like there was this whoosh, and I got this air that went into my body, and then the rest of the day I was in like this altered state where I just felt like I'd taken a drug, And so the last few years before I had the procedure, I was kind of interested in like spiritual sexuality, and I didn't really know what to do to find out about it. Like I just bought a few books and I started reading and learning about kind of breathing techniques and moving sexual energy around the body. So I kind of had this idea that I could heal from it, but I didn't really know how exactly. And it was only in the last few years I discovered this online program called Self-Cervix. And it's this woman, Olivia Bryan, she teaches women how to like recover their cervical pleasure, because like she has found that for many women, there's like good practices that you can do to heal the cervix and kind of awaken the sensation. So it's when I found that course that it really helped me a lot. So yeah. And yeah, I still like, I have pain in my cervix from the procedure. So I can't say I'm totally healed, but I have like recovered my libido, and it's kind of gone on to a different journey. Like it just opened up what sexuality is.
Okay, so you're breaking up just a little bit.
To me, and it became something.
Dang, quarantine internet problems. Okay, so just one second. I want to ask you to repeat what that course was that you found, because you broke up a little bit, so I wasn't able to.
Yeah, okay. So the course is called Self-Cervix, and it's a way that women can heal and awaken their cervixes to pleasure and sensation, because yeah, like this is a part of the body that's numb for a lot of women. Like they feel they don't understand anything about the cervix and how it connects to sexuality. So by doing those practices, I was able to like my libido and sensation, and finds like a really deeper kind of sexuality that feels more spiritual. And yeah, so there's like a silver lining to the experience.
Sure. Yeah, that is actually something that I have talked, I have mentioned probably in quite a few interviews, the silver lining of challenging and traumatic experiences, because if you're really able to sit with your experience and process the whole thing and alchemize it within yourself and really get, you know, the gold out of it and transform it into gold, then it ultimately empowers you more than you would have been without the experience. And it gives you more value to offer others to help them too. So it's kind of interesting how that part of human life works.
Yeah.
Paradox, is that the right word I'm thinking of? Okay, so wow, okay, so that orgasm that you were talking about, that you said that it felt like it came like from the air and that you were in an altered consciousness for the rest of the day. That sounds awesome. Were you practicing like a particular kind of breath work, or
no, it's because I knew nothing about that sex had anything to do with spirituality at this time in my life. So I feel like it was just like a taste, you know, like a taster. It's like, this is your lesson, this is what you need to know, that this is possible. And it just happened like totally out of the blue. And it wasn't like it happened again after that, but it was like I started to get curious about what I could do to kind of cultivate it. So yeah, it's taken me a while to find what I needed to, understand the relationship between spirituality and sexuality and explore that. But it's been an interesting journey.
That sounds like a really lovely taste. And when you think about the fact that statistics, whatever that means, say that the majority of women on the planet haven't even experienced an orgasm. To think about that one taste that you had and that altered state of consciousness that you had, that you were in for the rest of the day, like, if you could just like imagine if that's how we were all living, like in that like heightened, almost kind of like euphoric, pleasurable state of being, if that's how we were actually like living and going about our days and like creating and interrelating with people, I just imagine how completely different the whole face of the planet would be and our species.
Yeah. I'm getting a chill as you're talking. Yeah, and there's so much like shame and guilt around sexuality that it's like we can't even go there. Like we can't talk about it, we can't share it. And I guess more recently I started training to be a sexological body worker because I just felt like, this is part of how we awaken to our power as women, and how it's suppressed by shame and injuries like mine about our sexuality, that we can't experience our full power. So
that piece is, there's a lot of work to be done on that one. I haven't even had a taste like you have of that, but I've read about it, and I have been interested in Tantra for way longer than the universe would allow me to learn anything about it. It's just incredible how deep that rabbit hole goes when it comes to the true nature of what sexual energy really is, and the way that we're really made to relate with it. Like, I think I mentioned in a different interview that I was starting to read up on the Taoist perspective of working with your sexual energy, and I haven't even like gotten halfway through the book, and it's just like blown my mind to read about just like how intricate this science and art of working with the sexual energy is, and the different like parts of your body. Like, for instance, there's this part in this Taoist book that I was reading that has this like chapter on what they call Ovarian Kung Fu. And it's all about really understanding how like a woman's creative energy comes from her ovaries, which makes sense because that's where her eggs to create more life. But it isn't just to create like another human being, that there's an actual like creative force that's there. And it's just incredible when you really start getting into these things, and like to think about the way that we're all raised and programmed into modern day society to feel shameful and not even know how to have a right relationship with our own sexual energy. When you come across something like that, it's like, whoa. Like, we haven't even started to like really begin to wake up to what our true potential is as sexual sovereign beings. And I think it's awesome that you have been being called to that path, because it's hugely needed on the planet right now. And you seem like a perfect person to be a spokesperson for everybody's sexual liberation, especially from your personal story. So I'm just really grateful that you're getting out there and sharing what you've learned with everyone.
Yeah, thank you. I guess, and I kind of feel like, maybe I can't say it's not a bad thing that it happened exactly, but that I'm not sure if I probably wouldn't have taken this journey if it wasn't for what happened to me. And like that, the suffering that I went through kind of drives me forward to, like I don't want other people to suffer in that way. And and there's also this potential for healing and growing, and
definitely. Okay, I would love for you to Explain exactly what a sexological body worker is.
So a sexological body worker, I guess, is someone that helps people reach their full erotic potential, because you know, like, because we have so much shame and guilt around sexuality, and we get into these patterns, like you might be in a pattern of pleasing your man, or like, I think also as a society, we're very we can become disconnected to our body. So like our body's telling us, oh, I don't like this, and I want to be touched this way, but you can't always hear the messages because you're thinking about the other person, and or you're worried about how your body looks, and all kinds of things like that, because we just have so much baggage around sexuality. So yeah, so like a sexological body worker is someone you can go to like work through some of those issues and learn about your body, and learn like ways of breathing where you can like move sexual energy through your body to like you can increase your arousal, or you can heal and see what emotions come up. It's like you're connecting with your body. And there's another element of it which drew it to me, which is similar to the self-cervix work, which is like after you have a procedure like LEAP, you end up with scar tissue. And so there's something that we learn called scar tissue remediation, which is a way to release the scar tissue that might be on like sexual organs like the cervix. And it can also be a thing after childbirth, where like you have scar tissue that's like trapped energy, and where you can't feel so much sensation because of the scar tissue. So that's kind of what really appealed to me about it, as I saw like the potential for helping women recover after they've had any surgical procedure.
Beautiful. I'm glad that you're successfully alchemizing the trauma in your life.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how there's been a lot of talk about the menstrual cycle during this series, and about how really getting in tune with that helps us like slow down and honor the more cyclical side of life. And it just got me to thinking about how we're culturally programmed to like do everything fast. And I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of women haven't experienced orgasm or don't enjoy sex, because a woman's body is totally different from a man's, and you actually have to like take your time to love on a woman's full body enough to get her like to an appropriate arousal state that most of us don't even know how to do. Like, it's something that I've been wanting to work on for a while, and even like educating myself on it is like a totally different ballgame than actually being in the bedroom and trying to go slower. You don't know how to, and you're so deeply conditioned into just like rushing forward. It's like that there's so much work right there alone. And I just was thinking about how this type of work and really starting to slow down in this respect will help us begin to slow down like globally and as a civilization, just learning how to be calmer and slower in the bedroom.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And there's a book that helped me a lot actually, and it's called Slow Sex, and it's written by someone, I think his name is James Powell, but he went to these Polynesian islands, and he learned about this traditional way of having sex, where they would just like, they would have like sexual intercourse and they wouldn't move like for ages. They would just be like, their bodies would be connected and they would be breathing, and they just wouldn't move. And he said that the way we have sex is like, we speeded up sex the way our culture speeded up, and that it's not the way that it has to be. And I found his book really helpful for me, because it was like a really simple technique that I could explain to my partner who's like not studying tantra or anything like that, and I could just explain like, this is what we can try, and you can see what happens. And it's good for men too, because they can experience more like the pleasure, like sexual energy. It gives them time to breathe and for it to circulate through the body, so they can experience more of a full body experience, not and also not like this when we have sex. It's often about the build up of tension and then the release of tension in an orgasm, whereas if you slow down, it can be about circulating energy around the body and breathing and relaxing, so it's like expansive pleasure. So and I love that you were saying about how like slowing down the world as well. Maybe this is the new way after lockdown and slowing down. We can
totally. If you can imagine, like, if everybody knew that that's what their like soul assignment was right now, that's where their real light work was, to like practice in the bedroom. Like, that's your main priority right now, is to just slow down and enjoy your sexual experiences more. I don't think there would be as much complaining as other things that we have to do on the planet.
Yeah.
So talking about what you just mentioned, that's really beautiful. And I've been like reading sexual magic books and tantra and Taoist perspectives on sexuality for a few years now. And I also follow this beautiful woman on Facebook. Her name is Jackie Lane, and she is a coach in all of this work. I guess you could call her a sexological body worker, but that's not a label that she identifies. But she works all in that realm of helping to support women to heal their relationship with their sexual energy. And she just posted something recently about having soft sex and like plugging in with your partner and then letting them go soft and just like being still together. And I just think there's such untapped power and potential in that type of thing, because if you think about the way that a yoni or a vagina works, it's so sensitive. It's like so extremely hypersensitive that you could just like blow on it and feel pleasurable sensations, you know? So to think about like going really slow, as opposed to the way that most vaginas have experienced sex, which is like really fast, friction based, I can imagine how desensitized most women's sexual organs have become by just having that one type of sex. And no wonder most women aren't enjoying it, because that's not the way that we're built.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question. What was it? Oh, well, whatever. It's in the ethers. It'll come back. So, so you started a Facebook group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I started a Facebook group, I think about 3 years ago, when I realized that other women had been through what I went through. So I just decided that I would try and gather us all together, because a lot of women were just totally in the dark like me and didn't know what had happened to them, didn't realize that others were suffering in the same way. So yeah, I started a Facebook group just to share together anything that helps recovery and to just give people support. So yeah.
Beautiful. So you've been growing that for a few years. How many women do you have in that group right now?
There's about 4,000. Yeah, so there's a lot of women affected out there.
Gosh, well, that's got to make you feel good that you're able to be a shining light in their world in a way that you didn't have.
Yeah, it's been healing for me, I think, because when I somehow by helping others and just like giving them a bit of support here and there and answering their comments and posts does give them the support that I didn't have. So yeah, I really enjoy doing that.
I'm so glad you're doing that. What are some of the most common things that you hear from the women that have been affected by this?
I guess one of the most common things is that people, when they join the group, they're like, oh, I'm sorry that there are so many other women suffering, but I'm glad to know that I'm not crazy. And I think they just had these side effects that they weren't warned about, and so they just assume, oh, there's something wrong with me, I couldn't handle this procedure, there's something wrong with my body, like I messed up sexually, like all these horrible messages that they tell themselves because their sexuality wasn't understood by medical professionals. So that I hear a lot, and yeah, there's a lot of different side effects, not just the sexual ones, but sometimes like people's periods become more painful, and yeah, that kind of thing. So I think like the work you're doing, teaching people about the menstrual cycle, could be really helpful for them, because all these side effects are made worse by the fact that we're not really in tune with our cycles and we don't understand them. And when I learned that, I only learned that a few years ago, and I felt so sad. I was like, oh my God, I'm nearly 40 and I'm just learning like how each month I still struggle to kind of balance and rest at certain times so that I can, yeah, work in line with my cycle. I still find it hard. So yeah, it's such important information.
Definitely. And it's not the easiest thing to like adapt your life to, especially when we are in the modern day reality that we're in that doesn't honor any cycles of life. It's it takes time. It's not an overnight process, and it's such a personal journey for every woman, because every woman's body is different. Every woman has experienced different traumas. Every woman's got, you know, a different situation, different relationships in her life, and experiences her cycle totally differently. And, you know, the cycle's always fluctuating. So it really requires like each woman individually to be introspective, to be monitoring her own body and sensations and cycles, and studying herself to really be able to figure out the best way to support herself through all phases of the cycle. I mean,
Yeah.
I have been consciously working with my period for I don't know, 6 or 7 years now. And I just recently, over the last few months, like got deeper into it and have like really been focusing on all of the different phases and how I can sync my whole life with my cycle. And I mentioned this in another interview about how when you really start to do that, it like does this weird thing where it opens up like this new dimension and perception of time. Like I'm between each bleed for me now that I've been like syncing my life with my cycle feels so much longer. Like I have way more time to do all of the things that I need to get done. And I don't feel so rushed. Like I don't have enough time to do all the things anymore because of this syncing my life with my cycle. It's so interesting, the different things you can experience when you really start paying attention.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
Yeah. Well, I'm really grateful that you are doing the work that you're doing. We have a long way to go when it comes to healing our sexual energy. Like I said, I've been, you know, studying it and doing some work on my own, but that programming is so deep, and I know that it's really common for a lot of women to not even know how to like be present in their body when they start getting aroused, because they have had so many unpleasant sexual experiences, myself included. I'm so programmed to just like check out and like be in my mind and not in my body, that it's something that you have to practice.
Yeah, it is. And I think what I found through learning sexological bodywork is like we need some time to practice slowly and by ourselves, and like explore our bodies without like having an expectation, like without it having to be like the movies or another person. And and then you can really feel this, like you can become friends with your body, like the same way through your cycle you become friends with your body through knowing about that. You can learn that through sensation and having a heightened awareness of sensation, and when your body says yes and when your body says no, and listening to that voice, which can be hard to hear when you're with another person and you have those patterns and the traumas from the past. And yeah, so
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this work, most of it is like you just touched on, like the core of it. Really, it is learning to listen to your body and befriend your body and pay attention to what it's telling you in like all aspects of your life, not just through like menstruation, but through your own sexual experiences. And you brought up a good point also when you said that we need time to explore slowly on our own as well, because I think that that's something that I just have recently been learning, and I don't even know how to do. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of women who don't know how to have that sweet, sensual relationship with themselves, because we're not taught to relate to ourselves like that. And it just brings me back to what we were talking about earlier about like thinking about how different our species would be if we just operated in that like aroused state, altered state of consciousness all of the time. I personally believe that's truly like really the way that we're meant to experience life, is joyful and full of pleasure and excitement and like just feeling good for no reason. And cultivating a self-pleasure practice is like really powerful work when it comes to that, to come home to yourself and think about feeling good on your own, which also totally changes the dynamic of your sexual relationship with your partner. Because if you get to know your own body and what feels good to you on your own, then it gives much more potential to have more pleasurable experiences when you include somebody else. But if you don't even understand your own body and what feels good to you, how can you expect somebody else to know,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like, yeah, just practicing with yourself, like listening to what you like and what you don't like, it kind of just brings that awareness. So then when you're with a partner, you're more able to look up and yeah, have a different kind of experience in it.
Definitely. And
Yeah, it starts with
yeah, and I think also this type of practice could potentially help us develop healthier, stronger boundaries in our life, because it's a practice of listening to your body's yes and your body's no. And that's something that's also been really suppressed in us culturally, to not even know what a no feels like for us, or a yes, because we've just been paying attention to everything outside of us and going by whatever society tells us to go by. So I think that using that as a practice to really start tuning into your own yes and your own no could be very, very empowering also.
yeah, absolutely. It's like a revolution. The pleasure revolution.
A pleasure revolution. I love that. I feel like that needs to be a t-shirt or something. Okay, so for anybody watching that is interested in joining Kate's Facebook support group, I will give you the link for that if you want to join her. And also, Kate, if you just want to share a little bit about the mini sessions that you are offering right now for anybody interested.
Yeah, as part of my sexological bodywork training, I've also trained in something called body poem, which is a really great way of working when we can't do the hands-on work. So it's a way of learning to listen to your body through with a facilitator who can help you find the voice for your body and what the messages your body wants to tell. And through asking a series of questions, like you can start to feel sensations in your body and craft from what your body has to say. And it's a way of kind of healing and finding unspoken parts of yourself that need to speak. And yeah, it's really powerful. I really enjoyed learning it. So I'm offering mini sessions. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes. So if anyone wants a session for free as a taster, then they can get in contact with me and try it out.
Yay, beautiful. I might have to take you up on that offer. That sounds awesome. I'm sorry everyone for this poor connection, but I can't do much about it while we're all in Corona lockdown and everybody's on the Zoom platform.
Yeah.
Also, okay, I just wanted to touch on one other thing. I was just remembering something that you posted recently, which is helping remove that stigma of shame around our desires, like sexual desires, and how you were supporting women in kind of like writing out their erotic fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't really have an outlet for that. And I mean, we're such highly sexual beings. We're made from sex, and it's like such a big part of being a human being. It's not a wonder why we're kind of like messed up as a species right now, because we're not allowed to be in tune with our sexual desires. And I just thought that was really great to see you providing a space for women to express their eroticism through writing. I think that's a really beautiful way to help kind of like release and move some of that energy that is naturally in all of us.
Yeah. So I started teaching these writing classes for exploring sexuality last year, and I found it was really powerful, even for me, because I think like erotic energy and creative energy is so interconnected that you can feel like a completely sexual being without having any relationship at all, and just like exploring the energy in your body and being creative and writing it out. And I think like there's I think it's Vagina by Naomi Wolf, this book that's really a really important book about suppression of female sexuality. And she talks about how like during the witch hunts, any woman that like appeared to be too sexual, they would be killed and accused of being a witch. And I feel like we carry that in our DNA, that we are afraid to talk about sex. Like we feel guilty, we feel ashamed. And I think we also maybe carry that fear, like absolute terror, that you just cannot talk about this. And yeah, I think when you say like we're made from sex, like this is so fundamentally part of who we are, but yet we can barely talk about it with friends and anyone we know. So yeah, those writing classes for me were a way to help women break the silence, like, and it be just enjoying our sexuality for the sake of it, not because of a partner or anyone, just enjoying it for ourselves. So yeah.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, and when you really start to tap into more consciously working with your sexual energy, and you learn that you can allow it to like spread through your body and like fill all of yourselves and not just have it concentrated on your sexual organs, I think that that's where some potent healing potential lies, where you can heal things that wouldn't be able to be healed normally if you learn how to really work with that energy and channel it.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just like how you say, like how we're meant to be joyful and excited beings. Like we can't do that without our sexual energy, I don't think. So when we're suppressing it and like not kind of tending to our sexuality and our sex lives, you can get a little bit miserable and a little bit closed down and lacking in energy. So yeah, for me, like this is a huge part of it, is like breaking the silence and getting through that negativity and just letting it flow a bit better. So yeah,
Definitely. I think just really starting to have conversations about it alone helps a lot, because you're right. I think that, man, there's so much liberation happening in the collective right now, just from that era of witch hunting and all of the ways that women have been abused over the years for everything that makes us women. There's a lot of shame around talking about sex still. Like for me personally, I wasn't raised in any way that made me feel shameful about my sexual energy, but I also didn't have any reference to how to have a relationship with it. So I wasn't like a lot of others and was like really curious about exploring it on my own. I mean, I became sexually active with other people at too young of an age, honestly. But I've never even like really been that comfortable in discussing it. And that's been something that I have been shifting more in myself recently, as I kind of like peel back the cultural layers of shame that I'm programmed with. And I've just been noticing how I'm starting to talk about it more, and it's uncomfortable for me still, because I have a lot of that cultural programming that says I shouldn't talk about this. And it feels good. That's like one of the ways that you can consciously get out of your comfort zone and kind of like assist your own evolution by like making decisions to go outside of your comfort zone instead of being thrust out of it oftentimes, which is what happens to us in order to make us grow. So I think this is a really beautiful way to help kind of like dissolve the stigma around it. And I just wanted to add that for anybody who kind of feels that way also, that they aren't very comfortable talking about it, but they also don't know why and want to start shifting that within themselves. It might be uncomfortable for you, and you can totally do it and join me and Kate and women all over the planet who are helping to break the stigma and heal some of that cultural programming, so that, you know, collectively we're able to really experience life in the way that we're meant to, in a really pleasurable, joyful way, and not feel bad about it. Okay, Miss Kate.
yeah, and I think
Sorry, go ahead. We just have a little bit of a...
yeah, I was just saying, like, there's so much trapped energy in the topic, so it's such a fertile way to like let go of feelings and heal and evolve. So that uncomfortableness is really a sign that you can make a big leap and yeah, let go of it.
Definitely. It's so refreshing to just see the world lighting up with this liberation and new level of consciousness, and so many beautiful human beings really standing up and choosing to cultivate a different way of living and being for ourselves and future generations. I think about like my lineage, for instance, which I know is probably like the majority of lineages where, you know, my mother had no awareness about her cycle or any of the things that are really discussed in this series. And I know her mother, my grandmother, had no concept of any of this stuff. And I don't know how many generations this has gone back, but I know that there are a lot of women who are already past their menstruating years and didn't even have the opportunity to really be with their cycle and feel the gifts that it can bring a woman. And yeah, I feel for everybody who is at that stage. And also I'm just like really grateful that we're doing this work, because it's going to prevent that from being the reality for future generations. And that's what we can do right now, is just start shifting it where we're at and make it better for, you know, our children's and our children and grandchildren in the future. So I just want to say, Kate, thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing and for being courageous enough to move through all of the challenges that experience brought to you. And thank you so much for doing what you can to support other women so that they know that they're not alone, and helping to empower them in all of the ways that you're learning to empower yourself right now. I'm really grateful to be sharing the planet with you.
Same. It was great to be interviewed by you. Thank you.
Yay. Yes. And thank you so much for everybody watching. I believe this is the last episode, so I just want to say how much I've really enjoyed putting this together for everybody. And I hope everybody has enjoyed all of the interviews. Be sure to check out the information to join Kate's Facebook group, and also get her contact info from me if you want to book a mini session with her. And yeah, if there's nothing else that you want to add, Kate, I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's it. Great. Thanks.
Beautiful. Yay. Okay. Well, that does it for this episode of Awakening to the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle. Kate, you have a beautiful rest of your day. And everybody that's tuning in to watch this, have a beautiful day as well. Aloha.